In the 1800s, a black woman could be a servant, she could be invisible, but could she secretly control nearly $1 billion in today's money? This isn't a myth. This is the true story of Mary Ellen Pleasant. She wore an apron by day, and by night she ran an empire. They called her a witch. They smeared her in the papers, and history almost erased her. But not here, not tonight. Because once you hear how she built and lost one of the greatest hidden fortunes in American history, you'll understand why her story was buried and why it still matters. Mary Ellen Pleasant's story begins in mystery. Born around 1814, her birthplace is debated. Virginia, Georgia, even Philadelphia. That uncertainty followed her entire life. Some believe she encouraged it on purpose, because the less people knew, the more she could control the story. As a teenager, she worked as an indentured servant in New England. But she wasn't just cleaning, she was listening. Wealthy households revealed secrets in plain sight. How ledgers were balanced, how land was bought, how reputations were protected. She absorbed every detail. Knowledge, she realized, was a currency all its own. And there was something else she learned to use: her appearance. Mary Ellen was a black woman, but with her features and complexion, she could sometimes pass as white or Creole when the moment required. This ability became both a shield and a weapon. In a country where race dictated survival, passing allowed her to move between worlds, invisible in one, powerful in the other. In the 1840s, Mary Ellen married James Smith, a wealthy abolitionist. Smith was white, or at least he passed as white. That detail mattered. Together, the two of them weren't just husband and wife. They were partners in a mission. They used their resources to help enslaved people escape through the Underground Railroad. When Smith died, he left Mary Ellen a fortune, tens of thousands of dollars. That might sound small today, but back then it was a staggering inheritance. For a black woman, it was almost unheard of, and she understood what it meant: power if she played it carefully, but openly claiming that wealth could make her a target. So she learned to protect it with secrecy, allowing the world to underestimate her. But Smith's inheritance was just the beginning. Because once Mary Ellen set her eyes on California, her story took a turn no one saw coming. In 1852, Pleasant set sail for San Francisco during the height of the gold rush. Thousands of men came to dig for gold. She came to build an empire. She started small: laundries, boarding houses, and restaurants. Businesses that sounded ordinary, but were brilliant. Everyone needed them: miners, merchants, politicians. And her boarding houses became more than lodging. They were listening posts. Men bragged, whispered, plotted. She collected secrets and turned them into strategy. But Pleasant couldn't flaunt her power. Racism in California was vicious. Laws restricted where black people could live, testify, or even ride public transit. A wealthy black woman was unthinkable. So she played roles. In public, she was a servant, an apron-clad housekeeper. In private, she signed deeds and flipped investments. It was here in San Francisco that she married again, this time to John James Pleasant, a man of color. Unlike James Smith, John James wasn't wealthy. He was a craftsman, a laborer. He didn't bring money, but he brought cover. His presence gave Mary Ellen a layer of protection, the appearance of an ordinary working-class household, while she quietly built something extraordinary. But then came the alliance that changed everything. She partnered with Thomas Bell, a white banker. On paper, the fortune was his. In reality, the money and strategy were hers. Together, they built an empire worth what would be nearly $864 million today. And here's where the scandal brewed. Pleasant was still legally married to John James, but she was living and working inside Bell's mansion on Octavia Street. The arrangement fueled endless gossip. Was she Bell's mistress? His housekeeper? His equal? The truth didn't matter. The whispers alone gave her enemies ammunition that would one day destroy her. But while society gossiped, Pleasant was quietly buying the very city under their feet. And soon, her wealth would make her more dangerous than ever. With wealth came attention and attacks. Pleasant didn't just accumulate riches. She used her fortune for battle. She funded lawsuits against segregation. In the 1860s, she sued San Francisco streetcars for refusing black passengers, and she won, nearly a century before Rosa Parks. She also claimed to have financed John Brown's raid on Harper's Ferry, the bold strike that shook America's slaveholding South. That's when the press turned on her. White newspapers smeared her as a witch, a voodoo priestess, a schemer. They printed caricatures of her as a mammy pulling the strings of respectable white men. They whispered that she kept blackmail ledgers from her boarding houses, controlling politicians with secrets. Were the rumors true? Maybe some, maybe not. But it didn't matter. The smear campaign worked. To the public, she was no longer a businesswoman. She was a scandal, a myth, easier to mock than to respect. But to the black community, she was a general. They called her the mother of civil rights in California. She gave jobs, housing, and legal aid to those who had nowhere else to turn. Her fortune wasn't just personal, it was political. And while the city mocked her as a witch, she was laying the groundwork for civil rights battles long before they had names. But one fall down a staircase would change everything. In 1892, tragedy struck. Thomas Bell, her shield, her business partner, the man whose name fronted her empire, fell down the stairs of their Octavia Street mansion and died. For Mary Ellen Pleasant, that single moment unraveled decades of work. The Bell family, white and wealthy, had always resented her presence. Now, with Bell gone, they pounced. They accused her of manipulation, of fraud, of witchcraft. They dragged her through the courts, portraying her not as a partner, but as a predator. Lawsuits stripped away her holdings piece by piece. Land she had bought, businesses she had built, millions in property, gone. The irony is hard to miss. White tycoons like Leland Stanford, Collis Huntington, and Charles Crocker manipulated markets, bribed officials, and crushed competitors. And they were rewarded with universities, railroads, and monuments in their names. Mary Ellen Pleasant? She was vilified, her fortune erased, her name buried under scandal. The gossip around her living arrangement with Bell was weaponized against her. She bewitched him, the family claimed. She used dark powers to bend his will. Her enemies took the very secrecy that once protected her and turned it into proof of guilt. By her final years, she was isolated. Former allies vanished. Newspapers mocked her. The woman who once ran half of San Francisco's business district now lived under constant legal pressure, nearly penniless. In 1904, she died in obscurity. Her obituaries dismissed her as a schemer. Some pretended she had never been wealthy at all. History itself conspired to erase her. And here's the haunting truth. If Mary Ellen Pleasant had been white, she would be remembered as a titan. Instead, her empire was buried, and her story nearly went with it. Today, a small park in San Francisco bears her name. But a plaque cannot capture her story. She wasn't just a servant. She wasn't just a businesswoman. She was a strategist, a financier, a civil rights warrior, and for a time, she was one of the wealthiest women in America. Mary Ellen Pleasant's life isn't just history. It's a warning. It's proof that black success has always been a battlefield. She wore the mask of a servant, but behind it was a queen. If this story grabbed you, like, share, and hit subscribe. Because the next episode uncovers another Black American untold story they don't want you to know about. Tell me in the comments. Had you ever heard Mary Ellen Pleasant's name before today? And who else should we bring back from the shadows?